So, next episode, where we're going to look at shortening it. I've looked at plenty of other examples. I've got information from other builders that do replicas. I've had a look at this stuff that LCE does, and there's a lot of variation. And what I'm certainly not going to do is what some have done and basically cut it straight down that line, straight in half, chop 320mm out and join it back up. That's not happening. So first of all, if you chop it down that line, essentially what we're doing is chopping this bit out here. So we're chopping this, and you have to fabricate a narrow portion to a thicker portion, lots of welding. Now, I'm no fabricator, so a lot of what I'm going to try and do is minimize the actual amount of welding that I need to do, or seam welding anyway. What I've seen builders do, and it seems the way to go, is essentially cut this section out of the sill, unpick the B pillar off the sill, so you separate these two parts. Then when you move the back forward, this section then moves up to here, and what you're doing is you're cutting a section out here that is the same shape and thickness and joining it back up. So that's the easiest way of doing this, the sill. As for these rear quarter panels, again, I've seen people cut it straight in half, chop 320mm out and re-weld it. Not doing that either. So what I'm going to do is unpick this seam here, chop 320mm out, refabricate the flanges on here and weld that back up to where it was as factory. So this portion won't have a join in it. The roof, that will be, for now, just chop 320mm out. I'm not getting smart with that because that is not the roof that's staying on. I am doing the correct windscreen angle using an Audi 80 saloon A-pillar. It's not a two-door, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to fabricate the B pillar, but that comes later. So that's basically where I'm going. Now these bars that are welded in here are not for strength, they're just essentially to keep the distance correct between the A pillar and B pillar and a cross between the car. I'm in Queensland, in Australia, and you're not allowed to have a cage in the front of the car, so I'm not having a cage in mine. But I do want it to be strengthened, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a roll cage tube essentially from here all the way down to the B pillar, probably a bit further, probably run onto into the rear guard. And also then what I'm going to do is fabricate a plate like you put on the end of your roll cage feet in there, strengthen that up, and then run a tube, roll cage tube this way. I've seen LCE do that and a number of other places. They go straight to the back. What I'm going to do is bring mine in and turn it in and attach it to the turrets. So there'll be a lot of strength through here and some strength through there. I think we'll join them up somewhere, not quite sure yet. But essentially, that is how I propose to shorten this car. As I say, I've got a 4-door roof coming, not a 2-door. That's not even in the country yet. But when I get that, I think the only thing that I do need then is a pair of 2-door doors. But still on the lookout. So, next we'll show you the measuring up. So first up, centre line. I want to be able to make sure I can measure accurately either side of the centre line. Make sure we're measuring things correctly either sides. We need this when we're marking out this bit, so basically where I'm going to cut across where the tunnel is. So as I'm not a welder, my plan is when I cut sections is to try and limit the amount of welding that I need to do. So with this specific bit of the tunnel, what I'm trying to do is mark out 2 pieces that are effectively at the same height. So when I join them up, so when I weld them, they're on the same plane. I'm also going to do, where I can, is overlap the joins, spot weld them and then seam weld them. So it'll have 3 joins essentially. Try and keep it as strong as possible. So here we have a magic bit of cardboard. Surprisingly 320mm long. Now don't panic, I'm not going to use this to measure accurately the 320mm where I need to cut it. It's just there as a visual aid to see where 320mm would lie. So I will mark it at one side, make that a datum, and then basically measure off that line, measure accurately 320mm, and there we go. It's important to keep the cuts vertical, so the car is completely horizontal currently. Then the laser level on the square basically is a double check to make sure that that line that I'm going to draw as the datum is perfectly vertical. And that's the line that we then measure off. So there we go, we mark it, measure, make sure it's right. Measure again. And measure again. And make sure it's all exactly 320 mil. And basically, because the lines drawn are probably a mil wide, what I've made sure is that the inside of the line to the inside of the next line is 320 mil. So that's one side marked, and although I've not marked it, I will again try and overlap where I can, spot weld and seam weld to make it as strong as possible. One side done, on to the next. Basically just replicating the same procedure, marking the same rear datum line this time, and then from there working forward 320 mil, making sure it's all nice and vertical. So next is these bits. Now what I've seen with other conversions is people cut exactly where you can see my pen there. So cut 320 mil out and weld it back together. That's not what we're doing here. What I'm doing is again using a 320 mil piece of card to just roughly measure where we are. Is I'm going to unpick the spot welds that are on the B-pillar and then refabricate these back on the portion that you saw. So refabricate the flaps that you can see, flaps, flanges, whatever you like to call them. So we refabricate these, move them back 320 mil and then re-weld it up, and that basically means there is no cut in this section. It's just a refabrication of what is there from the factory. So we make sure it's nice and level, and then just basically with some dirty fingers make an impression and a mark on where the flaps go. Spot welded to the B-pillar. It's basically three of them, one on top, one at the side and one underneath. simply cut the template out and then offer it back up and just make sure it's about right. Now these don't have to be perfect. I'm going to make these as big as I can actually when I refabricate them. So there you go. Move the leading edge back 320mm. And mark the flaps. I look to be concentrating way too much here for a simple template. Hey, never said I was mega bright, did I? So they don't need to be too accurate at this point either. As I say, I want to, when I cut this, I want to remake them as wide as possible. Make sure they're as strong as possible. Again, one side done, on to the next. Replicate the same. $320mm back. Paper template. Dirty fingers. Cut the template, concentrate way too much. Draw around some flaps. You know you want to. Next is the roof. Although this still needs to be accurate in 320mm, this roof won't be staying on the car. Just need to make it exactly 320, so when I cut the car and shorten it and join it back up together, it keeps it all nice and square. Eventually this roof will be taken off and the 80 saloon roof will be grafted on. So the plan with the floor, again I'm going to try and minimise as much as I can the welding, and I'm going to overlap where I can, spot weld and seam weld. So the floor, I still want to retain these original runners, get the seats out. So this will be the bit that's fabricated after it's been shortened. So we'll typically weld the tunnel, weld the sills, weld the roof, etc., and this will be exposed. So we're not going to cut exactly 320 mm out, but we're going to run somewhere through there at the bottom, and for now we'll probably run somewhere across there at the top. That won't be 320 mm, but I want to give myself enough space to modify as we go. So I've already started getting all seam sealant out of this. Ready for cutting. So the advantage of cutting it where I will do as well, we won't have to repair that piece of rust, which is pretty similar on the other side. So do away with rust repairs. And if we actually look underneath, this seam here is pretty rusty underneath. So that gets rid of all that crap, which is good. Can't say I'm not nervous about cutting this. Not a fabricator, not a welder, doing it all on my own. So better get on with it, eh? But that's enough for this episode. So will the next be cutting it in half? Let's see.